ask a geek how to fix a problem you have been facing with your computer, they will likely ask you a question. Have you tried rebooting it? This seems like a flippant response, but rebooting a computer can actually solve many problems. And today, we are going to discuss about this magic of rebooting. Hi, welcome to Glitch, a podcast exploring tech news, how stuff works, innovation in our day-to-day technology, and the news surrounding them. I'm your host Vikram. I'm so excited that you are here. Thanks for joining with me today. Before I start into this segment, I would like to thank every one of you who has subscribed to my podcast. I know it's been a very good welcoming thing. I never thought the numbers would go so up. I was expecting all my close friends and family members to be subscribing to Glitch, and I saw the numbers lately. It's huge, and thanks for all the welcoming subscriptions you are giving. Now this has increased my level of responsibility with Glitch. Starting a podcast has always been my long-term goal because I have this love for technology, and someone just triggers me with any random topic about technology. The people around me knows that I go on and on and on about any technology which is there in the in the field. And I always had been writing blogs on these, and I do have my own blogs and stuff, but there was always something missing. Talking about the things you love is a new feel which you get, and I think I would be trying to make justice to this through this podcast. And the only main reason I started this podcast is to learn along with you people, and to give a new. I listened to most of the podcasts which are out there, but none of these are from a developer's point of view, or a guy who's been working with computers and who talks about them. So I thought, okay, this can be the voice of a tech geek going around codes and boards around his house, and what he feels about any technology out there, or why something does work in this way, so that someone out there gets help from my podcast or does something different in their home. That's something which I would consider success of this podcast. I know this is I'm completely new to this platform. There are going to be a lot of mistakes, and forgive me for all the mistakes. I know I'm gonna learn through along with you people. It's always been this way, even with my photography. Now I go back to all my old photos and think, okay, Vikram, you could have done something better there. So I consider this as my learning curve. Obviously my first few episodes are gonna be having so many mistakes. Maybe I'm repeating few words here and there, and people are finding it hard to come into my voice and get used to my voice on all this stuff. But believe me, give me some time. I think I will learn along the path, and I'm always open to feedbacks. Just write to me whatever you feel so that I can correct in upcoming episodes. So enough of all this stuff. Let's just get started with the segment. I just wanted to take some time to thank everyone who has subscribed and given their time to listen to my podcast, and thanks for all the love. So getting back to the segment, the magic of reboot. Something interesting happened a couple of days back. My mom was watching something in her phone. I think some random YouTube videos, and suddenly her phone started becoming, laggy, or something happened. And she just came to me and she was like, Vikram, just see what's happening with my mobile. It's just behaving crazy. I saw that, and there was few apps open in the background, and I saw the router was not behaving proper, because even I was facing some issues with the laptop. So I said, wait mom, I'm just gonna reboot the modem. After the reboot, everything went just seamlessly fine, and I think she got back her videos and stuff. Then she asked me a weird question saying, Vikram, if just a reboot fixes all this stuff, what are you doing with day in and day out sitting in front of black and white screen and saying you're working with all these chipsets? Can't I just go and turn it off and turn it on? Everything just works fine. So what do you do when you say you're fixing stuff? What does this do? This is actually an interesting question. Then I thought back, we developers, or we tech geeks, or we engineers don't just give a thought on what exactly happens when we say, reboot some device, or did you try rebooting? So what exactly happens here? So I thought I'll first start with this as my first episode. There's always a glitch in any system. And with my title, I thought it would be a great link for me to say what exactly happens with this glitch in the system and how a reboot fixes this glitch. Is it actually fixing this whole problem, or we are just rebooting it and getting away with this problem? So I thought I'll get deeper with this and try to explain in common terms with more English than more technical terms, and escape with saying justifying what we developers call it there's a bug, and from now on it's going to be a feature for you guys. Enjoy. So it's not going to be a session with that. I thought I will explain a bit deeper, and I just gathered some points. To start with, let me just first explain what exactly a reboot does. Reboot or restart, whatever we call it, right? So when you say you reboot something and it fixes, it means that that device is running with some software behind it. When you take devices at your home, basically all your electronic devices, there can be two types. One, it's actually embedded systems device, like which has a microprocessor or a microcontroller, which basically has a brain behind it and it can do some complex tasks. Or it can be a dumb device, say for example your heater. Nowadays there are smart heaters, but I'm not talking about those. Just a dumb heater or some fan or something. So the second types of devices doesn't need any reboot. They are not gonna be laggy. There is nothing. These are not the devices we are gonna talk about in today's segment. The first set of devices which I spoke about, the embedded systems, and or the device which has some brain and can do some complex tasks. For example, your mobile phone, your computer, or some smart devices, your router. These are the devices which you will always, when you call your customer care, they will ask you, did you try rebooting this device? So what happens in this is basically, let me just take a simpler example and then go into all these devices. We have our Windows PCs at our home. This is the best example I could take, because we have always, everyone would have seen a blue screen of death. Basically, we see this Windows halls and showing a blue screen of death. We call it as a blue screen of death because this is something which most of the users would have seen. You'd be working with your PC and suddenly everything stops and you see physical memory dumping error. So what happens here? What is this Windows doing this? So to explain why rebooting can fix so many problems, I need to explain this ultimate software problem on a Windows computer. So let's just separate and dive deeper into this and see what happens here. So basically these blue screen of death, whatever is called, this blue screen error is caused by a low level system malfunction. So when we say system malfunction and low level system malfunctions, basically your hardware is not performing well. So hardware is like your memory, or maybe your computer's got more heated up. Basically this is the problem here. When you say there's hardware issue, or Windows has gotten into some kind of error in between. For example, if your graphics driver crashes, right? Or say your whole physical memory, which we call it as a RAM, right? The random access memory, it gets full. So in these cases, you see this blue screen. So restart fixes this blue screen of death. But why doesn't Windows just simply fix the problem rather than restarting the whole driver itself? Well, because it can't. This is because the code, right? The whole Windows will have its own software code, and the code has encountered some problem and stopped working completely. So this is why this blue screen comes up. So there is no way for it to continue. By restarting, the code can start from square one, and hopefully it won't encounter the problem again. So basically this blue screen or this restart is giving the code to say you can start from square one, but we are just hoping that it doesn't encounter the same problem. This is how we deal with most of the debugging issues. And when a restart happens, this is one of the things which happens and which fixes the whole issue. So this is from a software point of view. Okay, so this is like your Windows faces a blue screen of death, and the restart just helps the whole code to come to square one and start the race again. This is one way of encountering the restart problem. So that said, right, that now I explained all the software layer of problems, and I just gave a simpler on top layer example of how something like simple restart can fix this blue screen. But it's not fixing. That's not what I wanted to talk in this session. Let's take a broader example now, a deeper one where I take up any device. So for example, let's take any embedded device, right? For a, I don't want to take routers or TV, but let's assume a device. So when I told you these embedded devices have its own brain, its own, a microprocessor or microcontroller, which we call it, has its own brain. So which means these devices have a way to sense the outside world, which means they have their own sensors, like how we have our brain and our five sensory organs, right? These sensors help these devices to sense the environment they are in, and they are constantly in the work of collecting these datas and analyzing these datas and storing them, and all these things happens in the backend. So what happens here is sometimes this whole device gets into its own thought process. That's what we call it as bug. Sometimes it doesn't behave the way we want it to behave, the way it has been programmed to behave. Why this happens is because there's something called a memory region in this device, like how we have our thought process happening. So these devices have their own memory, and these memories are responsible for handling these data from the environment, and making a meaningful example of whatever is coming from the sensor values. So when we say there is a glitch or there's a problem encountered and we need a restart to happen, so what happens here is we call it as random access memory. It's like how in daytime we have our brain working, right? We constantly look out and we gather all this information. Suddenly we are in a state where it's all overwhelming for us, and we need to take a step back and see, okay boss, this is so much information for me. The same thing happens to these devices. Sometimes these random access memory get overfilled, or some sensor might be giving it too many data, or some corrupt data is coming in, and this device get stuck in a state. So what happens here is the code cannot move forward from this state because the code doesn't know what to do, or the code doesn't have enough memory. So in this scenarios, we need to detach the system. So the way of doing it is by restarting. It's like going to sleep and waking up and starting a fresh day. So similarly, we are trying to reboot the system. So when the system reboots, right, the memory wipes off, which means the sensors are going to gather new information fed into this memory, and the memory is going to start fresh. That's how most of the reboot problems get just fixed with a small restart. So now we can ask a question saying, why can't you just, what exactly the problem is? Can't you just increase the memory region, or, tell the code what to do when it gets stuck? Instead of going to, rebooting and asking me to reboot, can't the code just jump this step and go ahead one step and just clear on its own? The problem comes because of the system design, or the cost of materials, or the whole device cost itself, because memories are super costly. It's not like your thumb drives, a 1 GB memory, or 10 gigabyte of hard disk, or nothing like that. These are memory regions which are so small and tiny, like 20 KB or 1 MB. 1 MB is like huge memory for any embedded engineer out there. So what happens here is these memories are all in single chipset, right? Which means they are really tiny, and we need to manufacture in such a way that this memory and everything which this device does, it goes into small packages, which means every extra byte you add into this memory is going to cost you. Engineers are supposed to make a design which costs less. At the same time, we need to find a trade-off where we could give the maximum efficiency out of this device, which means we need to find this small nexus or point where the cost is less but the performance is more. That's exactly how these corner cases arrive, where your device runs into such problems and glitches. But that's fine, because we are efficient coders out here, which means we know these problems gonna come in, and that's when we call we ask you to reboot. It's not gonna happen always, but if your device needs frequent reboot, which means that you need to call your technician and then try to fix this, because this reboot fix will most likely be needed once in a year, or maybe if your device is super frequently used, maybe once or twice in 3 months or 4 months. That's the frequency I'm talking about. If your device is needing frequent reboot and you have been laggy here and there, then it means that you need to upgrade your system, or your system is being put into overheat mode, or you're just taking the juice out of the system. You need to invest a little bit more or try to upgrade your software in this. So now you can ask me this question, Vikram, so what kind of devices I need to reboot to fix this? You cannot go around and start rebooting every device in your house. So a good practice is always to turn off or reboot your modem once in a while. The device or the router which collects dust in the corner of your house, right? So it's always advisable. In my house, I have this practice of rebooting it every night. Doesn't mean that you need to practice the same, because I don't need this router running during night time unless I have some downloads running. So that's fine. But every week, once in a week, if you reboot, it's good for the router's chipset which is running, and it also helps someone is trying to hack into your network. It just reboots and asks them to go around and start from starting. So that's a good practice to reboot your modem. And obviously your TVs and your smart TVs or anything else, that's fine. You can also once in a while reboot your phone. That obviously when you find it laggy, you do that. But that's exactly what's happening behind the screens of the mobile phones, even with softwares, right? When you start working with Chrome or Firefox, when you see it's becoming laggy, what they ask you to do is you just close this and reopen this app, which means this Firefox, Google Chrome or whatever application you're running is consuming more of this memory, which I was talking about, right? So when you close this app, this memory gets cleared, and when you reopen it again, and it just starts from fresh, and there's not going to be any glitch. So basically everything boils down to this memory region, and reboot basically just gives the program a second chance to run from starting, and just hope doesn't run into this same problem again. So to conclude, restarting a computer or a device just basically wipes off the current state of the software or the hardware you're using, which has become problematic, and gives a chance to start fresh and with the hope of not encountering the problem again. So I think with this we have come to the end of the segment, and I hope I have done justice to whatever I told and you got your answers. If still you are in confused state or have confused you much more, I would suggest you just comment whatever your questions are coming to your head. Maybe I will try to address that in my next coming podcast, or you can just write a mail to me. All my contact details are there in the platform you're listening to, or you can just visit my own website. It's ivkaalan.com, and you can write to me anything. We can catch up in my LinkedIn, or you can just go around and check my profile. Thank you so much for listening to Glitch. Let me meet you in next interesting episode. Until then, it's bye from Vikram.